everybody. Welcome to the BWC Online Bible Study. Today we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 23. As we look at Genesis chapter 23, we have been following along, really kind of taking a look at the marriage and the life of Abraham and Sarah for the last several chapters. And the call of God on their lives. You know, Abraham was called by God, and he and Sarah had to leave where they were to go where God was telling them to go, to be obedient to the Lord, to do what he said do. And I don't know if you have a close relationship with God or if you've ever experienced the call of God on your life, but it's an undeniable thing that can't easily be shaken from you. And when God is calling you, I can understand it. I can understand chucking everything to the side and stepping into what it is that God has for you to do. And that's where we see Abraham and Sarah here. They went off. They listened to the promises of God. They held tight to their faith in God. They messed some things up so bad along the way. And we see just God's grace throughout all of that. You know, the highs and lows, the ups and the downs of marriage. And when we get to Genesis chapter 23, we're talking about the burial of Sarah. So it's the final step in this covenant that they made together in marriage of Abraham saying goodbye to her. They did it. They made it all the way through. And you know, I'm just about finished up with a little book that I'm writing about marriage right now. And one of the things that I talk about at the end of it is my mom, who just passed away recently, and how my mom and dad fulfilled the marriage promise that they had made to each other. That there were good times and bad times. There were hard and terrible things and beautiful, wonderful things. And how there was a lot of better that we never would have made it to if they would have given up in the times that were worse. And so we see that with Abraham and Sarah too. Like, there were difficult times. There were times when they kind of messed things up, butted heads. Things didn't turn out the way that they thought they were going to. They were waiting on promises and kind of gave up in the middle of that and went their own way. But how when you turn it back around to God, when you keep your heart focused in on God, that he will take you to the place that you are called to go. And Abraham did. He kept his heart focused on God. He had faith and he trusted in the Lord, even when God asked him for the most difficult thing that he could ever ask a person for, and just to see how God gloriously brought him through that. And now here we see at the end that they did it. They made it all the way. You know, we don't see that as much nowadays. People give up so easily. They face a difficult season. They go through a terrible time, and they just give up. And I'm not knocking anybody who's been through something, you know, between you and God, you know, working things out. There's everybody's story is a different story. And you know, I've been through things as well. And so, but to see this couple make it all the way through to the end, to see it through, to do what God has called you to do, with all of your heart to the finish. And so here we see, I'm going to start to read to you, and then we'll start to talk about like Abraham and Sarah and how he chooses to honor her in this moment when she has gone on to be with the Lord. It says, when Sarah was 127 years old, she died in Kereth Arba. It says, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. You know, it is a normal process to have tears, to shed tears, to feel these feelings of loss, and to be stepping this out one foot at a time. You know, they had loved each other for a very long time. And as he's laying his beautiful wife to rest, just his heart, in that he mourned and he wept for her. We read in the New Testament where Jesus also wept. And it's like there are times when life just overflows, from our heart into the tears on our face, and that's okay. Like, we don't want to stay there. We don't want to stay there in that sadness, but it is very appropriate for us to have a time to process the things that we're going through. And really, you're going to be processing it throughout the rest of your life. And Abraham took the time to mourn and to weep for her. It says, then leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial. The Hittites replied to Abraham, listen, my lord, you are honored prince among us. Choose the finest of our tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in any way. So you see the favor that Abraham had because of the life that Abraham lived. He's been through all of these different seasons in his life and has really been faithful to the call of God. And, that fruit is evident when you are following after God. Like, the integrity follows. People will see it. They will see the call that God has placed on you. They will see a life lived out for the Lord. And you see that here because he has favor even in a land of foreign people. And it said, then Abraham bowed low to the Hittites and said, since you are willing to help me in this way, be so kind as to ask Ephron of Zoar to let me buy his cave at Machpelah down at the end of the field, and I will pay full price in the presence of witnesses, so I will have a permanent burial place for my family. And so they're offering to give this to Abraham for free, but Abraham wants to do things above the board. He doesn't want to take just the gift. He wants to make sure that outright this land that he is burying his wife in is going to belong to him. And it says Ephron was sitting among the elders. So he answered Abraham while the others listened, speaking publicly before all the Hittite elders in the town. So again, like I said, this is not some kind of backdoor deal. Like, Abraham is doing things above the board. He's doing them in the presence of the witnesses. He is doing things in a way that everyone will understand that this land will belong to him. And Ephron was sitting among the others. Okay, he answered. I think I read that already. I'm going to read it one more time. Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered to Abraham, as the others listened, speaking publicly before all the Hittite elders in the town. No, my lord, he said to Abraham, please listen to me. I will give you the field and the cave. In the presence of my people, I will give it to you. Go and bury your dead. So you see the compassion there that they have for him. Abraham bowed low before the citizens of the land, and he replied to Ephron as everyone listened, no, listen to me. I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field so I can bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, my lord, listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver, but what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead. So Abraham agreed to Ephron's price, and he paid the amount as suggested, 400 pieces of silver, weighed according to the market standard. The Hittite elders witnessed the transaction. So he's being very open, very honest about what he wanted here. He wanted a place to bury his bride, and he wanted it to belong to him, so that someone could not come along later and take it away. It was going to be his. So Abraham bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron and Machpelah near Mamre, and included the field itself, the cave that was in it, the surrounding trees, and was transferred to Abraham as his permanent possession in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gate. And Abraham buried his wife Sarah there in Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, also called Hebron. So the field and the cave were transferred from the Hittites to Abraham for for Abraham to use as a permanent burial place. And we'll find out as we read on later on that that Abraham ends up, like, Sarah's buried there. Abraham will be buried there. His son, his grandson, their wives will be buried there. And so when we look at this, there's not, it's like, how do you look at this chapter of the Bible and apply these things to your life? And like I said, for myself, this is just really, fresh off the heels of my mom going to be with the Lord. And so, like, I've just been through all of these things with my dad and my brother and my sister, and having that time to mourn the loss and really finding a place of honor and being able to have those moments to show honor to the person that you love. And what a beautiful thing that can be. Because, as a person, our job as Christians, the people that God calls us to be, is to love the Lord, to be called according to his purpose, to spread the message of Jesus, to bring up the next generation. When my mom went home to be with the Lord, she is there with him now. But parts of her will always live on in me. There are things that she has taught me, things that are ingrained in my heart that I have taught my children, that will be passed on from generation to generation. We're called to do that. We're called to disciple and bring up this next generation, so that what we have in Christ, what we have in God, doesn't die out with us. You don't want to be given a gift and just bury it in the ground and keep it to yourself. Our job is to raise up the next generation, to get them prepared to take the place when it's our time to move into a different season. My son is in ministry as well, and I just want to always just pour into him. And I think about generations to come after that, like what my mom has given to me and teaching me about Christ. I get to pour into him, and he will pour into his children, and generation on generation, that generational blessing that we're going to learn about later in the Word. And just the goodness of God in that, to see your children rise up and be the person that they're called to be. Sarah, when she goes on to be with the Lord, the love that she had for her family, the faith and trust that she had in God. Abraham, the faith and trust that he had in God, it didn't end with him. We see that now because we are still learning from Abraham. We are still growing from his experiences and the places that he went and the struggles that he had and the times that he just really connected his heart to God and trusted him with everything that he had, even when it made no sense. And, it's like that sometimes in this life. I was reading something earlier today that was talking about, really having faith in God means understanding that we don't have control of the situations. And that can be such a hard thing for us as people. Like, I work in the hospital, and so when a person is passing away, I've done this for a really long time, and you watch the family try to find things that they can control because the situation is so far out of their control. And I found myself, even though I see it in other people all the time, and it makes sense to me, like I understand it. But when my mom was at this point of being ready to go home to the Lord, like she had stated what she wanted, she had struggled. The road was hard, and she was tired, and systems were failing, and she was ready to go home to the Lord. And it's like all of us were finding things that we could try to hold on to and grasp to that were within our control because everything felt so far out of our control. But really, when you let go, is when you find yourself in a place of true faith in God, because it's not up to you how it turns out. It's not up to you where it goes from here. Now, we're supposed to do our part. When God calls you to do something, you're supposed to do the part that you're called to do. But you're not in control of all the circumstances, of all the people's feelings, of people's hearts, of the outcome. You're just doing what God called you to do today to the best of your ability, loving people today to the best of your ability. And so that's what I want to leave you guys with today as we wrap up Genesis 23 and head into Genesis 24 next week. I just want you to think on these things, to think on the faith that Abraham and Sarah had in God, the beauty of the fact that they did it. They made it. They crossed the finish line. They fulfilled that promise to one another. And that in that beautiful love that they had for one another in those moments when Abraham is mourning the loss of his wife, how he just wanted to still continue to walk in integrity, to do things the way that God had called him to do them, and to make sure that this land, he was still taking care of her, even in the time when her spirit was no longer there, but he still wanted to honor her in those days. And so that's what I want to leave you guys with today, Genesis chapter 23, and I will catch you back again in Genesis chapter 24. No, stop.